about to crank it up a few notches and have an incredible time with the folks behind Shadow of War. My name is Victor Lucas. I am from the Electric Playground. Yes, I'm still making the Electric Playground. You can watch content at epn.tv. But that's not what we're talking about right now. We are going to get to meet the people that made this incredible game. We're going to start with Phil Straub, the director of art at Monolith. Come on out, Phil. We have Tony Elias, who is the lead narrative designer at Monolith. Bob Roberts, the design director at Monolith. Mr. Troy Baker, who's reprising his role as Talion, but this time he's also the performance capture director for Shadow of War. And Mr. Alistair Duncan, reprising his role as Celebrimbor.
I think that was the first time.
Yes.
I think that was the first time. Oh man, there it is.
What's that?
This is the first time I ever came out early for my cue.
Oh yes.
Normally I do that cool pause where it's like Troy Baker, beat, walk out. I was literally standing over the side while you were talking about
That's because you're being nice to me, and I appreciate that, Troy.
No, I was trying to do something cool on Instagram, and it didn't work.
All right. I'm a huge fan of Shadow of Mordor. Who likes Shadow of Mordor in the house?
Yeah, man.
Yes? Right. Well, these guys have made something enormous with Shadow of War, and I think what we want to start with is we want to set the stage and sort of give us a little bit of an overview of what we just saw in the video. Tony, can you kind of give us a sense of where we're at right now in the development of the story?
Sure. I think as you see in the video, like we pretty much finished with Shadow of Mordor with Talion and Celebrimbor's decision to forge a new ring of power. So they've had some temporary victories against Sauron and his lieutenants, and we're 10 years have passed since then, and we're picking up back at the crack of doom with the forging of a new ring.
So how have Talion and Celebrimbor sort of evolved from their origin story, which we got to play in the first game?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the first game begins with the death of Talion's family and Talion.
Why are you smiling when you say that?
It's just, it's everything begins. He becomes the Grave Walker. So that story is very much one of revenge. And I think with Shadow of War, we've kind of expanded the stakes, and it's really much more about the fate of Middle-earth.
Awesome. Well, speaking of Talion and Celebrimbor, we have a cool video to show these incredible protagonists in action.
Oh, where? Oh, yeah.
Right here.
I have upheld my end of the bargain, and your champion has upheld his! For fighting this pitiful enemy, the Dark Lord promised mercy! Gaze now upon the bright Lord! I make no such offer! Run! Run to your master! Give him this message! I come for him!
Bright Lord is not messing around.
No.
Not messing around. Troy, what's it like to return as Talion?
Well, first of all, I just got to say, I love the fact, this is how dedicated we of a team, especially with the animation department that we have at Monolith, they had to animate me spitting. That's kind of cool. It's incredible. You know, as an actor, if you ever get a job, that's like, yay. If they ask you to come back, yay. That's even cooler. The fact that now Talion is you know, lore. It's like Tolkien lore now. Like we wanted to create a character that not only we could write a story about and create a story and an experience, but that you as a player could feel like you are now a part of this world. And to be able to do that and to see the response that people have had and everyone had the best experience with their own narrative that they created with the Nemesis system. So to be able to come back now and go, all right, we wanted to set it up, you know, in the very beginning to make it to be this one thing, but now it's become so much bigger. And for us to come back and to be able to kind of get the band back together with, because I love working with this guy, Alistair, which if I can, I want to set you up.
Okay, go.
Who played the first game? Okay.
Everybody in the room, yes?
So this guy is kind of down here the entire time, right? We didn't rehearse that scene. We're just like, you know what? This is what it looks like. We kind of got a general sense of the space, because when we shoot a scene, we're in a soundstage, gray padded walls, which I'm used to, and us in the weird suits with, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more later, but it's performance capture, right? So we don't have the benefit of the amazing world art that you see. A lot of times those sets are not even built by the time we're shooting them. So we knew that we had to do this one scene where Talion starts this one part of, you know, the gladiator moment where he's speaking to the arena, and then it was going to transition over into Celebrimbor and becomes our first Bright Lord moment of the game. And so I did my part. And then I was like, okay, Alistair, let's just full throttle, baby, whatever you want to do. What you saw was first take.
Awesome.
And all of us were genuinely frightened. He goes, ah! We're like, oh my God, he can scream because he rattled the rafters. And all I remember is he finished, and I very quietly looked at our sound guy. I was like, please tell me you got that. He was like,
That was it.
and so that's what ended up in the game. So.
Well, it was weird for me to see Alistair smiling and happy when I met him.
Right?
Yeah, I know. I'm not really a smiling character. That's not what I do.
What was it like returning to Celebrimbor for yourself, sir?
It was phenomenal. When I actually got the job, basically they said they wanted somebody who was the same size as Troy and was British with a deep voice, and that was it. You know, I got the job. And then they found out maybe I could act a bit. And it was such a joy to actually have a character that has so much, one, depth, and two, is such a good bad guy, because that's always the most interesting thing to play. And then coming back this time, because in the first game, we're trying to find out what the hell's going on, and we're getting through it, and we're, at the end, we found it. And this time, we're taking it that one stage further. We're actually becoming proactive. We're going out there to do something in this world. And how that affects our relationship, and the fact that there is a separation to begin with, and the sacrifices that are made to bring us back together. And out of that sacrifice, actually, it causes more conflict. So we are just, it gets pretty gnarly at times in this game between us. Which is
Felix and Oscar.
Felix and Oscar.
Really,
Yeah, I'm the untidy
six
one.
people in the room got that joke.
Yeah,
That's
no, nobody, they're completely over. Hello.
Read the room,
Yeah,
Troy.
we're going. So it was cool. It was great coming back to it and to have a chance to play it.
Well, Troy, you were the performance capture director this time, so I'm wondering how that was with this connected performance. You guys kind of need to rely on each other like crazy. Were you bossing Alistair? Like, how did that go down?
No.
Yes,
no.
yes, he was.
That's not what I heard.
The way that came about is really interesting, and I love most people that know me know that I love rolling up my sleeves and really getting dirty with the studios and really kind of infusing myself into the DNA of how a studio works. And I look for those opportunities to be able to really work hands-on as far up the chain of the creative as I can, because I feel like even if I'm just going to be an actor in this, it helps me to really understand the wars that have been fought, both won and lost, by the time that we as actors see those pages on the stage. So before, I used to be very much like, well, what if we just change this? I'm like, that's a great idea. That probably should have gotten to us about 6 months ago. So being able to understand how many people are involved in this is something that is really of great interest to me. So when we finished the first game, and Monolith brought me up, and they were like, we kind of want to show you what we're thinking about doing for the sequel. And I looked on the board, and they had just cast this amazing vision. This whiteboard was just filled with all the ideas. And through that conversation, it just became this organic idea of not really needing someone to help cast a vision for the performances, but really just be able to execute what the team wanted to do. And it became more of like, less of a coach and more of a quarterback. And so I was there on the field with the other players going, okay, here's the vision that our coach has for this play. And this is what I'm using a football metaphor, and don't think the irony is not lost on me.
Go Hawks.
But it really became a team effort between Phil Straub, who heads up our cinematics team, Ethan Walker, and Nate Henderson, Tony Elias, everybody that's a part of our cinematics team, and being able to figure out what these scenes, why we're making this a scene, and why we're taking the stick away from the player for a second to pause and give them a moment of like, this is about the character, and it's really important. So those were the stakes that I was presented with, and I got to work with my friends. I got to work with Alistair. I got to work with Laura Bailey, who's Altariel, who I saw a cosplayer. If you're here right now, I hope you are, because you are awesome. Is she front and center?
Nice.
Can you stand up for me real quick? She made this. This is our Altariel cosplay. Who doesn't want to be that? Incredible. Those are the moments, those are the characters that we wanted to create. Hell yeah, dude.
Very nice. That's awesome.
This is why we do what we do, is because we want to have the kind of impact on you guys that makes you want to not only play the game, but embody the character so much so that you'll go into Starbucks looking like that. So it was fun for me as an actor to be able to disseminate the information coming down from the team to the other players and go, here's what's at stake in this. And really, 98% of directing is casting. You put the right people in place, sure. You put the right pages in front of them, and watch the magic. And I really feel so good about the story that we created with this. And we fought hard for this. We fought with each other over this. And it's if there's no contention, there's no care. And it's fun to be a part of that kind of creative process with people that it's family and you're like brothers and you can be at each other's throats 1 minute, but then you're shoulder to shoulder with each other the next. So it was an awesome experience.
Well, speaking of fighting, Bob, I want to talk to you about the combat in the game and taking all of that character work and also the leveling up that has happened since Shadow of Mordor with Talion and Celebrimbor. They're such badasses. What did that mean for you and your role in making these characters incredible in the sequel?
Yeah, so one thing that we were nervous about early on is the last game, you get pretty OP by the end of the game, honestly. And,
yes.
and we got some criticism for that. And frankly, the people who had the worst time with the game are the ones who never die, who just dominate everybody, because the Nemesis system feeds on your suffering, and it needs
like Bob.
you. Yeah. Just suck the life out of people. And it needs you to die and to get pissed at these guys and to want to go back and get revenge. And so when you're just annihilating everybody, it didn't come to life. And so we started off kind of worried that like we have so many ideas of how we want to level up the mechanics and give you more powerful, cool, fun, improvisational moves that you can pull off, but that nervousness of like, but if we just keep adding to your power level, how are we going to keep pace? But by the time we got the fortress assaults implemented and all the advanced classes and the challenge was starting to mount, it started to become obvious, like the AI count is higher, the challenge is higher. We kind of need everything in the arsenal to even keep pace with how much tougher things got. And so now it's like Celebrimbor is coming out all over the place. You've got the big held heavy attacks and he manifests and pulls out this huge glaive and big AoEs going off.
That's for me, I'll take it.
I'll be home soon.
We have some incredible concept art that we're cycling through right here. And Phil, I want to talk to you a little bit about the sort of the influences for the visual kind of look of the game.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that, the idea of the Bright Lord existed in Shadow of Mordor. We understood what it was, and we put that concept, those visual concepts, into our key art and into the game. This idea that, you have these two characters that are becoming one, and Talion being the Gondorian human, him being, in terms of combat, more focused on the sort of direct, brutal kills, and Celebrimbor being more agile and having this magical component. But once we started really early development on Shadow of War, our goal was to sort of further solidify that, to really embrace that as something that is very unique to the franchise, to the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games. And so, very early stages, we talked to a guy named Michael Komark, a very talented illustrator, which we're cycling through this work right now. And the goal was, okay, so we know we have this thing that's unique to us, but how do we define the rule set? What does it mean when Talion and Celebrimbor are the Bright Lord? What does it look like? And when is it fully half and half? And is it half and half? Is it a quarter? Is it a third? And how do those shapes actually overlay with each other? And what does that look like in combat? Once we had these early illustrations, we were looking to define tone and mood and attitude and obviously the visual components. We started working on very early the key art for the game, which you guys have all seen now, which I'm very excited about that stuff because it really epitomizes so many things on the visual side of the game. It epitomizes just the core art direction. We have the concepts of duality. We have the concepts of light and dark and light and shadow. And we have the concepts of chiaroscuro. The team likes to tease me because I always use that term, but it's, if you guys have seen our materials, there it is right there, this idea of light and shadow. And then, the other thing that I would add is, the color choices are absolutely on purpose. Talion leans usually more towards the warm color tones, and Celebrimbor leans more towards the cool color tones. And we use color and so much of the themes that we talk about from a narrative standpoint, from a game design standpoint, these things are carried throughout our characters and the general experience. And for what it's worth, and when we were talking about putting this panel together, I was really excited because when we talk about this stuff, we're really talking about, what the art team is bringing to this character, what the narrative is bringing, and what the gameplay is bringing, and what the performance is bringing. And it's one of these things that it's just nice to see that come together and to build on that. And, as Bob was saying with a lot of the combat, we brought in a bunch of really new cool moves that both of these characters can do, and the visual effects associated with that really started with understanding this duality and the key art in those early concepts.
Awesome. Well, it's not just Talion and Celebrimbor in the game. We've got some new characters to introduce, and one of them right now that we're going to introduce to you is Baranor.
Are you all right?
I might need a moment.
You cannot delay. When you find Idril, escape to the west. Have a second chance at life.
I've already lived 2 lives. I was born somewhere near Umber. Herodrim.
That is a long way from Minas Ithil.
My order sent me to Gondor as a guarantee of peace. But the Herodrim had other enemies. I was to return, but by the time I was 10, we lost contact. I lived a good life in Minas Ithil. I was respected. I was happy. And then it fell.
So now you commence your third life.
The only life that matters is the one with Idril. But we have to find her first.
And that we will.
It is so crazy to see that. Very cool.
Good. Good scene.
Tony, let's find out a little bit more about Baranor. How was this character developed? Who is he, and how was this character developed?
Sure. Baranor's an interesting character. He really started off as kind of a minor character. He had a couple scenes, a couple lines, but through the development process, we found that there was generic Gondorian 2 and 3 and 4 in there who'd come in for like 1 line each, and usually in the development process, you find yourself in a situation like that. It's kind of an opportunity to, combine them together and create, like, kind of level them up into a real character.
Right.
But then, you find that you don't really have to create much character for the walk-ons, but once you create a sort of a full-fledged narrative character, you have to start making these specific decisions about who they are and what they want and what their backstory was. And so this idea of what was originally this Haradrim war orphan who had grown up in Minas Ithil and risen through the ranks to become the second in command, which is just this really compelling idea. Our game is focused on Mordor, but we have all of Middle-earth to draw from, and it was just one of the ways in which we could, we can't really go to Harad, but we can sort of touch on that culture by bringing in one of its characters in the same way that, we have this Minas Ithil, this Gondorian city at the sort of edge of Mordor, and we can start bringing in that culture and exploring it through, its characters and collectibles.
There's so many orcs to destroy in this game, it's ridiculously fun, but it's nice to see a human face.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So what is the relationship between Baranor and Talion?
Well, the game, very early on in the game, it begins with the siege of Minas Ithil. So Minas Ithil is this frontier city right at the edge of Mordor, and basically Talion enters into the fray and finds that these are characters who share a lot of similarities to the person that he was in when he was stationed at the Black Gate, this kind of frontier at the edge of Mordor. And so he, in some ways, he's been killing orcs in Mordor for a very long time, and so I think his relationships with Idril and Baranor allow him to sort of reconnect with his humanity in some ways and be part of a team in a way, because he's been alone for so long.
Well, Baranor and Idril also have a connection and some kind of a relationship there that's hinted at in that video. Can you tell us a little bit about who Idril is and how?
So Idril is another Gondorian soldier in the armed forces of Minas Ithil, and they are both soldiers who you fight alongside during the first act of the game. But I'm not sure I'm going to say any more than that because I don't want to I don't want to spoil
Bite your
it.
tongue.
Yeah. So I'm going to bite my tongue on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it seems that Talion has some human followers as well as some orc followers. Can you build your army, Bob, with humans and orcs?
Well, so at the start of the game, you're, like Tony said, we're in Minas Ithil, and Talion's connecting with that humanity more, and that's where we kind of introduce some of those follower mechanics and having buddies you can call in and get support from. And so you develop a sort of relationship with these guys and a dependence on those mechanics if you're using them a lot, that then when you go deeper into Mordor and Minas Ithil is farther behind you, you have to kind of swap out with the orcs, and it's part of that trajectory that you're going on as you accumulate power. And frankly, that's a key, I think, distinction with how we treat growing power in an RPG, in a video game,
right,
where you're also dealing with Tolkien and the themes of how sinister power is, that you have to kind of embrace that it's satisfying and it feels really good, especially in a game, to grow in power. But then you have to embrace that that's not necessarily always good.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, how did you design the character of Baranor?
Yeah, he's a really interesting one, and he was a neat challenge because, when we're looking at character design and we're looking at, the character design coupling with the narrative and with the performance, we're always talking about these layers, the layers of visual cues that tell a story. There's a history there. And I think Baranor was this opportunity where, he's two components. He's representative of the visual designs that we put together for the Gondorian soldiers that were inside Minas Ithil. So the costume design for them is unique to us. And he has the Minas Ithil Gondorian symbol in his full character design, and that permeates throughout the soldiers and Castamir and Idril. But then he's also got this backstory, this deeper story about him, and because he has this Herod descent or Herod backstory. So what we did is we tried to figure out a way to develop that Gondorian soldier look. And then bring some of those some of these sort of Persian influence elements into his design. So he had a character depth, a visual depth that was as deep as what Tony was trying to accomplish and everybody on the panel was trying to accomplish. And so, yeah, you'll see little bits. He's got the scarf there. He's got some of the other Herod elements around his torso. But the other thing that's cool, real quick, just to talk about Baranor, is that, when we're developing these characters, that there's so much research that we do in terms of the visuals. We're looking at everything from, the available thread counts during the time period that this takes place. We're looking at the type of pigments that would have been available. We're looking at how the armor would have been formed and the craftsmanship that would have been sort of associated that. So he's just a really good example for how we think about bringing this authenticity and this. I always think of it as a real three-dimensional character that has these layers, and we're always talking about these layers, across all of the panelists here. They're just trying to make these characters feel realistic and be compelling.
Awesome. We're going to open up the floor to questions in about 20 minutes. So there are microphones, I think, on both sides there. If you've got some questions you want to ask this panel, please feel free to line up, and we definitely will get some great questions from the audience. But Troy, I want to talk about the actor who plays Baranor and directing this new act, because you've got new cast members this time around.
This is what's so cool is that you. Some of these, this is the first time that I've seen some of these scenes, so the way that the movie played out in my head was completely different. But this scene specifically was, there's a phrase for writers that days have been lost on eighths of pages. And this was a very, very small scene that was something we're going to tack on to the end of our day. And it was like, we just need to get, we're going from this one place to this one place. It's a really, really small scene. And we're an action game. We've got some great moments of drama, and we have great moments of character building. But for the most part, shit's on fire or things are blowing up, and we've got like drakes in the sky. So there's not like a lot of quiet moments that we have. And this was one of those moments where we on the set really kind of crafted this, because I think there were some lines that we took out, there's lines that were replaced. We worked together as a team to really make this a scene that honored and set up the character of Baranor and really gave a vehicle for Ike Amadi, who's the actor that plays him, to really show us what he can do. And it was just, we got done, we were like, wow, we almost completely glossed over this scene because it served a systemic purpose, but it was a great opportunity for character. And so to finally see how it came to be, and I've noticed the small details. Keep in mind, we're wearing Velcro suits, right? So there's a scene where Talion kind of sits back and you hear that leather crinkle, which is what would happen if I was wearing what Talion is wearing. And so the multitudes of people that are in charge of the smallest detail to make sure that it feels, sounds, and looks authentic just constantly blows my mind. So to be able to see that and see how they really, really captured, Ike gave this really contemplative performance. And this is a guy that's talking about not just his life, but the lives that he had and has lost and has had and has lost. And that's why Talion says, so now you begin your third life. It's a really poignant moment. And the fact that we had such a great team that captured the facial, the fact that we had an amazing character model to begin with, to know that that's what this is going to map to. And it does look like Ike. I mean, Ike is a handsome dude, Baranor is a handsome dude, so it wasn't too hard to stretch. But it was really cool to finally see the amount of time and care that went into that scene so that you guys could really learn more about a new character.
And also, what was fascinating about it, watching it, was the humanity that comes out in Talion, and where the story is going to take us, and what that's going to mean to Talion and Celebrimbor, because the relationship that you had there with him was so powerful. It was all there in that one scene. It was like, and that's who Talion, in a way, would love to be. That's to have that humanity, but he can't. So I think it's a beautiful scene, and it's a great example of actually what you were trying to do there and trying to achieve with the depth of character, with the thread count of our costumes, which I didn't realize you were actually doing.
350 is where I typically like.
350,
355. Egyptian cotton.
Egyptian cotton, always Egyptian cotton.
Well, we have another incredible character to introduce today, named Carnán, and we're going to see that video of her right now. Let's take a look.
The spirit of Carnán has witnessed Middle-earth's devastation and its revival many times over. It was here before any of us, and she will be here long after we have perished.
Unleashed to rise and rise again. In a hole go you.
What have we unleashed?
The cry of the forests. Scream of the rich. He stalks forge's cage like kindling for sheltering fire to come. Burn you, burn we. Ringmaker, your forge sings. A crack across the land. Fire woken by a cold mental.
We hear your call. Allow us to help.
A deathless beast. You, a flesh-haunted thing.
We will find Tor Goroth.
Go now. Your Balrog waits. He rises into shadow. Death will defeat undead.
I think we shot that scene more than anything, not because we couldn't get it right, but because it was so fascinating to watch her work.
It's very cool. What is the actor's name?
Tox, I'm going to remember her last name, Alagunde.
Alagundu.
Is that right?
Alagundu, yeah.
I said it right?
Yeah.
Almost.
Oh,
Close enough.
that was actually something that you guys, because we did a round of auditions and then we kind of layered it down to like 5 people, I think. And then as soon as she walked in, it was like her.
Yeah, it was kind of a no-brainer. It's you see in her language, it's very difficult. She's this sort of alien kind of creature who just works on a different time scale than anyone else. And so I think a lot of the actors who auditioned came in with a very kind of, witchy sort of
they kind of wanted to make it like
delivery.
this Shakespearean, like cauldron, toil and trouble. And it was like, no. And she was the first one. She had this, she's naturally like her parents. She's like the most eclectic person, like Swedish, Nigerian. It's crazy. Yeah.
Is she 10 feet tall?
Huh?
Is she 10 feet tall?
She's super tall.
Very tall.
She's on the show The Neighbors. If you guys watch that, she's a phenomenal actress. And what she brought to it was something that inherently felt so. We needed this character to feel so different from every other character. Like, one of these things is not like the other. And she just walked in and instantly with the way that she spoke. And we did our best to write stuff for her that would just make, it was just this obstacle course for her to like navigate the entire time. And it was just fascinating. Her physicality, like you see on that left hand, the way that it moves. This is the other thing. I'm sorry, Victor, it's your panel, but this is just, I love watching this stuff.
This is our panel.
We had no idea what she was going to look like when we shot this.
That's cool.
Come
Was
on,
she
Troy.
doing all of that?
I gave you a sketch.
You gave me sketches.
I gave you a sketch.
I had
It was like a
sketches.
stick figure, but I was like, that's enough, right, Troy?
It's such an iterative process, and like Straub's back there going, I don't know, we know she's going to be tall. I think she started off like she could have just been a tree, or she's part of a tree.
Yep.
And so I say that to say this, so much of where this character ended up was really, Tokes had such agency in that, and her performance really did such a great job of helping the team go, this is what the character should look like, because she did such a fantastic job.
Well, we should get a kind of an overview of what Carnán is. Can you give us a sense of what she represents?
Sure. I love Carnán. Like, she's just such an interesting character. She enabled us to like play with these really important themes in Tolkien's work. He has a lot of nature spirits and nature-related characters. Like Tom Bombadil and Goldberry and Old Man Willow and characters like that. And she just, like Tom Bombadil, he's kind of this all-powerful, very mysterious figure in the books. And also strangely politically neutral. Like Carnán doesn't particularly care about what Talion wants to get done in his battles with Sauron. It's really like, you forged a ring and you woke the Balrog, and now you have to help me put him back into the ground. So,
You're messing with my money.
Yeah. So she enlists him in that effort. So, I mean, she's. I think, sort of Tolkien was once asked, like, what is Lord of the Rings about? And his answer really was that it's about death and the desire for deathlessness. And I think for a character like Carnán, who is really about life and death and renewal, the renewal of life and death, the renewal of life through death, that's what she finds truly abhorrent, like characters like Targaroth and these necromancers, and I think even Talion himself
Talion
is kind of like a bit disgusting to her.
Flesh-haunted thing. It's like, hey, words hurt.
But she'll use you for a time, so you can be useful. So she was just an interesting character. She enabled us to play with those themes like throughout the work.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting to see Celebrimbor and Talion so well behaved, because normally they're just kicking
Celebrimbor especially,
But my
such
relation-
an arrogant bastard usually.
Arrogant bastard, and he's over here.
I hate everybody. I think everybody is less than me, and of course they are. But this is the first time there's a character who is so beyond my ken that when I look at her, I see something that I understand how powerful and how all-encompassing she is, and I still believe that I know more than everybody else, and that she's actually, that I know who she is, and obviously Talion doesn't. But it's the first time that I feel that Celebrimbor is truly in awe of something else.
And this was a great moment when we were on the stage actually working through this scene. That was the objective that we gave to Alistair. It's like, there are certain steps of the dance that are laid out, but so much of it is interpretive to the performer. So it's like, here's your goal, man. We need to believe that Celebrimbor is in awe of this person. That was the challenge. We all sat down and was like, whatever you got to do to make us believe and go, he's different, he's acting weird, so that we act different and we feel off-put by that. That was the goal. And so that's when, again, you come back to casting and making sure you got the right people and you play with it. It's like, do you actually take a knee? And there was one take we did where he went down on when he was like, it's a bit too much. But that scene is such a pivotal character moment for Celebrimbor specifically, but also for the relationship of Talion and Celebrimbor, because it's like, there's a shift here. This is not normally, you're the one who's leading, and Talion really is the one going, yeah, we'll do these things, while Celebrimbor is like freaking out, going, "I'm such a huge fan."
Which was a line of mine, actually.
We cut it, but I felt it worked, but whatever.
But it was
a selfie moment. It was weird.
And having Troy direct us all, and in this scene, it was probably the most difficult scene to do, because we were discovering everything. Like, as you say, what was it? Where are we going with this? And it was so much fun seeing him working it out and going, okay, that doesn't work. Let's try this. And going and then putting on his actor hat and running down that road. It was a joy, actually, and to be working with Tox, who listening to her, it was so easy in a way to play the scene, because she was so idiosyncratic. She was so different. She was so unexpected that it was like, you're like, oh, I've got a line now. All right, yeah.
You would get locked in and mesmerized by what she was saying.
Yeah.
And again, I just got to go back to what this process looks like, because it's so challenging, because you walk into a blank slate, and it's we don't really know what her lair looks like. So we need to build something that makes it look like we actually had this one C-stand that had like a rope hanging onto it. So when we come over, we get this, feeling like he's pushing a branch, and kind of like the ceiling is a little bit lower and opening up into this grand space that something that's 10 or 12 feet tall could walk through. So, and even how we end up in this location was a challenge to figure out how we do that. So there's so many things that at one point, hopefully we can show you, just so you can see, again, the many hands that touch this to bring you that 3-minute clip is truly a work of art, and is truly a work of magic, in my opinion.
Awesome. Well, Carnán has shape-shifting abilities, and Bob, I want to talk about, employing a character that can become a Graug or a Drake or a Caragor. What does that mean for the player?
Yeah, so, obviously she's a perfect character for us, with that kind of being the nature spirit, taking different forms, both as a voice on the wind or manifesting as these different beasts. That we're always looking for ways to have the narrative feed tutorials and teach players things and give you opportunities to practice skills that we're introducing. And we've added a lot to the beasts. We added the Drake, it's a whole new beast, but on top of that, the Caragors and Graugs, being able to ride them and climb way more freely this time with them, and rail running along with the big Caragors and stealth killing, and having an excuse to get with this really interesting story character to explore some of these mechanics and sort of reveal some of the new depth we're putting into it. It's a nice marriage there with the way Carnán came together.
That's amazing. This is all Carnán, by the way, in the concept work, which is just mind-blowing. And we've got some incredible concept art here. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Phil?
Yeah, I just I want to start with basically saying, I'm going to second what everybody said. Carnán is, I think, for all of us, one of our favorite characters. And from a visual design standpoint, one that I was really excited about, and I'm still excited about. I think that, first and foremost, you want to be a fanboy here for a second. The initial sketches that we did were a partnership that we had with an artist named Wayne Barlow. So I'm assuming some folks in the audience will know who he is. He's known for Dante's Inferno. He's done like 300 children's books. I'm not sorry, children's books. Excuse me, books. Maybe he's done a children's book. I don't know. But usually not children's books. And then he's also
Where did that come in, children's books?
I don't know. I don't know.
You thinking about your kids right now?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But he's also he's done work on films. He did work on Avatar. He did work on Alien. So he's got this incredible pedigree. But more than that, and more interesting than that, he has this very unique style of creature development. And when we started talking about this character, and I talked to all these guys about what they were trying to accomplish with her, I said, we got to talk to Wayne because he's going to inject something new, something different, and something exciting into, these games and this lore and this franchise. And so, we just had I put together a brief, we had a brief call with him, and then he just started coming up with these amazingly just interesting and unique concepts that just blew everybody's minds. It was just like, wow, this is so fresh. And then, of course, the other thing that's really cool about development of this on the visual side is you're not developing one character.
Yeah.
You're developing this suite of characters, that is, there's obviously the Drake, there's the Graug, there's the Karagor, but then there's this human bipedal form. And that was the one that I felt like was an interesting challenge. And I know, in particular, Tony, you and I and Michael DePlatter went through a lot of conversations. It's like, okay, so we know she's intimidating. We know she's kind of monster-like, but we didn't want her to be a monster trope. We wanted her to be relatable, and this is the stuff that we talk about all the time when we're doing visual development. So, how do we get that across? And the first way that we can get that across is by trying to give her a face that doesn't feel like it's just a human face plopped on this kind of strange creature, but enough of a human face where when she's talking, when you're interacting, with her, you can relate to her. It's the concept of relatedness, and
I think that was the challenge initially with that character, where I think the original brief was like, we're going to create this character that is an alien presence, right. But you have to meet with her multiple times and then also be relatable. So it's just kind of they're really at odds with each other, and so I think it took a while before we went the route of like having this human bipedal form inside the tree. It was like it was this voice inside a tree. It was like the way the leaves moved. It was all these other things before then, and it presents these really difficult creative challenges.
But but they were really fun. I like that. I know you do too. I like those types of creative challenges because it is uncharted, and how can you make something unique? Because that's what we want to bring to you guys. We want to bring you something fresh, something interesting, something unique that you haven't seen before.
That also feels authentic.
That was
actually one of the things that Troy brought up at the beginning when he talked about Talion being part of the lore. You guys are creating content now that is part of the lore.
Right.
And I want to, Tony, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this process. How does that happen? How does it, the checks and balances, and how does it fit into the Tolkien lore?
Super easy.
Is it?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is probably a subject we could talk all day about.
I know.
I won't.
We actually have to get that question cleared through legal
Yes, I bet we do, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a time period. We're set after the end of The Hobbit and before the Lord of the Rings. We have this time period in which it's a challenge of like taking on any IP, like if you're working in Star Wars, if you're working in the world of Middle Earth, where how it ends. What happens to Sauron, what happens to the One Ring. There are certain constraints around that, but you find this place, you create these new characters in this sort of negative space within that world, and in a lot of our thinking about working with this IP, it's really about going back to the original themes that inspired Tolkien in a lot of ways, and so that affects the way we write our characters. That they have a lot of the language has Anglo-Saxon influences and not Latinate influences, and also the sort of Nordic mythology is really important in informing a lot of the themes and stories that we take on. And so a lot of the same inspirations that Tolkien had in creating Lord of the Rings are the same things that we're trying to draw from. And it's the sort of thing we just there's like conversations and arguments about it all the time, because we're there's a real range of we're kind of nerds for this stuff, but we don't want to be we want to be respectful but not overly reverent and slavish, because I think it does a disservice to.
You gotta make a fun game too, right?
To the audience, to players. I think anything that any story that has real longevity is able to it refashions based on the medium that you're creating it in and the time that you're creating it in. You think of the Greek and Roman myths. You think of Shakespeare. These are works that are restaged in different ways in different periods, and they become eternal in that way.
Yeah.
I don't think they would if you did everything exactly as the author did when they put the last period on the book.
Right. But what a gift Tolkien gave.
Oh, absolutely.
Creators.
It's just such
forever,
a wonderful
right?
world to play in.
Wow.
There's just so much that
amazing.
you can work with in it.
I know that some of you have questions. I can't see you, however, because the lights are in my eyeballs. But okay, I can see you, so you're going to start.
Excellent. I just wanted to ask, this is mostly for Phil. You were talking about the thread
Can you
counts and armors.
speak up a little bit? We got some cosplay squeaks going on right here.
What is going on?
Oh, I think...
I think orcs coming in?
Oh my God, it's more. Oh God, these guys.
Yeah. All right.
Italian, I think you're up.
Hello. Hi.
Speak plainly, Orc.
Okay,
These
why don't-
words
why
may
don't
be
you
your
go,
last.
Rattenberger?
Like this. My name's Mog.
Okay, I'm Og.
Hi, Mog.
I'm from Middle-earth. Uh-oh. I was wondering, first of all, I'd like to thank you for painting orcs in a good light. There's been a lot of animosity in recent years, and we appreciate it. Second of all, since you have updated the Nemesis system, there are all kinds of memories that I have repressed for years that have been coming back to me, and I was wondering, is there a way to turn this off? And if so, who do I talk to? And if not, who do I kill?
I think.
Tony?
The name of the person responsible is Chris Hoagie. I'm not going to provide you with his address, but if you kill him, I think the memories will depart. He's our systems designer.
Good.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Let's get the... Thank you, Mog. Sir.
Phil, you were talking about the thread counts and armors that would be available in the time period. What time period exactly are we thinking of?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, essentially, the way that we think about it is medieval Europe. I mean, that's sort of where Tolkien was drawing a lot of his influences, and we're not slaves to that. And we kind of as Tony was saying, we bring in other influences, but essentially medieval Europe. And it's just really for me. Here's the thing, and I'll try to be really brief. Is there's a lot of entertainment content out there that's done really well, where the costume design is really well thought out. Obviously Game of Thrones, these amazing franchise. Yep. And then there's others where, and that's fine. They're more about form over function, and we're really more about function over form. So when we're doing our costumes, we're not like, let's just add this thing because it looks cool, or it's going to create a cool silhouette. We want all those things, but we also want to make sure that everything that we're doing, that we're adding on, has a reason and it has a purpose.
With that said, I think also that's more true of like the humans and the Gondorians and everything. We do push it a little farther on the orcs, and part of that is again thematically, like Tolkien intentionally made them a bit anachronistic, and they're kind of pushing on the frontier of industrialization, and so they're pushing out beyond that kind of more safe and guarded medieval era technology and flavor.
They do. You know, and I think that that's a super valid point. But you know, even when we're designing, you know, a lot of our orcs, and we have, I think that's a good point. You know, Bob, we have expanded the visual language of what an orc can be, but every time we do that, it is gone through this filter of like what types of metal could have been available, what types of armor could they have found? Like, you know, one of the tribes that we have that's certainly interesting to talk about is the Marauder tribe, right? So where are they getting all this gold? Well, they're pirates, and they're stealing all that stuff from all of these other races and cobbling it together. So it's not like we're you know, saying that the Marauder tribe is crafting these amazing things. And, you know, maybe there is an orc or two that could do that, but really, that tribe in particular is one that's, you know, drawing from other races and stealing those components and putting together their costume design and fortress designs.
Let's hear from the orc from James Cameron's Avatar.
Hello. I am Orthog.
Hi,
I
Orthog.
am of the Machine Tribe. Now, I'm a union man through and through. The Machine Tribe has been very good to me. I've worked my way through the ranks. That being said, I am interested in what the perks might be in joining Talion in his quests. Are there benefits? Is there a pension? Is there dental? If you can tell me there is dental, I'm there like, whoa.
Bob, is there dental?
The dental is, but we do have daycare.
Okay. Okay.
It's reasonable.
Awesome. All right. Sir.
Hi, I wanted to ask about microtransactions. At what point in the project did they become part of the scope, and how do you envision them impacting the casual player and the whale?
Okay, so I think the best thing I can say as a design director is all of our playtesting and balancing and everything that we've done throughout the process all the way up to the end has been done assuming that the players we give the game to do it don't have access to that, and so they're just playing the base game that you would buy for $60 if you bought the normal copy. Everything's balanced around that and tuned for that experience. So that's the game that I've been focused on designing and balancing. So.
All right, cool. Sir?
I really kind of wanted to know about how it feels kind of to be part of the Monolith team after the success of Shadow of Mordor. 'Cause, I mean, like, the game was incredibly popular.
Yeah.
Right?
They're with you.
So,
They're cool.
I mean, I don't know, like, what's different? Like, how does it feel different?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'll take part of it. I think it is a great question. You know, once Shadow was done and it was out, and you know, we got such a great response from all of you guys. Thank you for that. You know, I don't think a lot did change really for us. I mean, we're a very family-oriented studio, and that's not a line of crap. It's actually really true. It takes an incredible amount of collaboration to make these games, and you know, from my perspective, I feel like it's the human capital, it's those relationships that actually bring the best creativity out. So, you know, I think that the thing that did change is we wanted to make sure that for you guys that we didn't rest on our laurels. We didn't want to do a 1.5. We wanted to do something that was going to be, you know, an order of magnitude larger across all components of the game, across the story, across the worlds, across the Nemesis system, across just everything. So I think we're still the same people that we were when we were working on Shadow of Mordor, and we're still the same people that we were when we started Shadow of War. Maybe we got a little bit more, a little bit older, a little bit wiser, maybe. I'm not sure. What do you think, Troy? You feel wiser?
No, I'm far more stupid than I was.
I mean, also, we just, for some amount of the team, especially in the leadership group, there's a bunch of studios coming together at that time, the beginning of Shadow of Mordor, when we had folks from Snowblind and Surreal and different studios that Warner Brothers owned that came together into the Monolith family. And we were working together and working out how to interact with each other throughout the process of Shadow of Mordor. So by the time we shipped, and the success really, in some ways, it helps anchor everybody to hey, we're all capable of this. We can do it.
Yeah.
We just actually pulled it off. So now we're a little more comfortable with each other, and we figured each other out a little bit better. We communicate better. And so I think between the interpersonal improvements after having gone through that whole big cycle together and knowing that we can actually do something cool like that together, on top of the fact that we're actually building on the foundation technologically and game design-wise and everything of the first game, that we were able to accomplish so much more this time.
Monolith's been kicking butt since No One Lives Forever. Amazing studio. Yeah, amazing studio. All right. Dog AT-ATs? Yes? I can't see that from here. Oh, cow AT-ATs. Okay. Cats. Okay, sorry.
This question is for Celebrimbor, Forger of the Rings of Power.
Yes, indeed.
And
How can I help you?
Italian Ranger of Mordor. Since it's an incredible opportunity to see both of you together, I was wondering if you might be able to sign my first copy of the game. If not, can you at least give us a preview if this game is successful or not? Will you be back for a third?
Will we be back?
Will we be back?
Dude, if asked, hell yeah.
In a nanosecond.
Who doesn't want to
Yeah.
do this? Who knows, man? We'll see where this thing plays out. If we
Yeah.
can sign something, I don't know if we're allowed to. Dude, if you see me around, that would be an honor. You have no idea for both of us.
Absolutely.
The fact that you want that just means that all we want to do is make a game that we want to play, and the fact that it means something to you is even cooler. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Can I have your shirt?
That is a damn cool shirt.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, man. So, being between a voice actor and doing mocap, what would you say is the difference between playing someone like Delsin Rowe in Infamous 2 to playing Talion?
Way to be on brand. I love it. I mean, both of those processes were very similar. The only difference between this was that it was my face on Delsin versus someone that looks way cooler with Talion. But that's, both of those were, performance capture based. And here's the thing, if anybody out here, this is always a question that we get, take the voice off of the voice actor. It's an actor. It's acting is acting is acting. Sometimes you're given one tool, the other time you're given another. But at the end of the day, everybody that's up here simply wants to create something that has impact. So as far as what's the difference, nothing, man. I go to work and all I want to do is make a game, like I said before, that I want to play, or that when it hits those shelves, we feel like we really accomplished something. And that's true for Second Son, and it's certainly true for Shadow of War.
Okay, so I was wondering on the subject of Sauron's new body, in all classic lore and everything, Dark Lords, they have trouble keeping their bodies, and as we saw, he has been dead. So I was wondering how he has managed to get a new one. Is that going to be revealed?
How has
In the new
Sauron.
trailer, he was-
Sauron gotten a new body?
Sorry, so the question is, how did Sauron get a new body?
He's got a guy in Santa Monica that is super good.
Taylor.
So I think it's the same idea with the Nazgul, where when the ring was cut from his finger, he loses corporeal form but can regain it over time
as his power grows.
Yeah,
He just has that present form.
That concludes our presentation for today, everybody. Sorry, we can't take any more questions. Well, they're telling me to please wrap up, so we got to wrap up. But
Shout it out! Get him out.
Thank you so much.
42!
It was awesome to have you here. Let's hear it for these people.
You guys.
Let's hear it for Monolith.